The shelter was cold, filled with silence, and the smell of metal and dust. Rows of cages lined the walls, each one holding different alien children. Some of them looked tired, some looked angry, and some looked empty inside. But most of them still had a spark of life in their eyes, waiting for someone to take them away. James, a human man with kind but tired eyes, stepped inside slowly. He had never been in a place like this before. The workers at the front desk told him this was a rescue shelter, but he could already feel it was more like a prison. As he walked between the cages, he saw small hands gripping the bars, long ears twitching, wings folded tightly against small bodies. Some children tried to smile at him, forcing hope in their faces, hoping he might choose them. Others turned their heads away, too broken to try anymore. James felt his chest grow heavy. It was not an easy thing to walk here, knowing every child wanted to be free, but he could only take one. He reached the far corner of the shelter, where the lights were dim and the cages smaller. And there he saw her, a little alien girl, curled up on the floor of her cage. Her skin was pale, with faint lines of glowing blue running across it, like veins of light. Her hair was messy, falling over her face, and her clothes were old and torn. She did not look up when James came closer. She did not cry or call for him. She just sat in silence, holding her knees tightly to her chest as if she wanted to disappear. Something in James stopped moving. He looked at her, and for a moment it was like the noise of the shelter faded away. This child was not like the others. She was not waiting for someone to pick her. She had already given up. Her silence was louder than all the voices calling for help. James felt his throat dry, and he whispered to himself, "Why does she look so broken?" A worker noticed where James was standing and came over. The worker shook his head and gave a small laugh. "That one? Nobody wants her. She's been here the longest. Too quiet, too weak, doesn't respond to anything. We call her the saddest one in the shelter. A lost cause, if you ask me. You'd better look at the others. Stronger ones. Easier to raise." James kept his eyes on the girl. "What's her name?" he asked. The worker shrugged. "No real name. The files call her Subject 19. She doesn't talk much. Won't even answer when you try. Useless, really. If you want my advice, don't waste your time. She'll only cause trouble." The words useless and waste echoed in James's mind. He looked again at the small figure inside the cage. She was still sitting in the same position, like a statue carved out of sadness. And yet, he thought he saw her shoulders shake, just slightly, like maybe she had heard every word spoken about her. His chest tightened. He remembered himself as a child, left alone in the dark after his parents died, feeling the same kind of emptiness. That memory cut into him like a blade. James knelt down near the bars. He spoke softly, his voice calm, careful, like talking to a frightened animal. "Hey, little one, can you hear me?" For a long moment, nothing happened. She didn't move. She didn't lift her head. James was about to give up, but then, slowly, one glowing eye peeked out from behind her hair. It was not the look of hope, not even the look of trust. It was a look of deep fear mixed with disbelief, as if she could not understand why anyone was speaking to her kindly. James gave a small smile. "It's okay. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. I just want you to know. I see you." The girl's head lowered again, hiding her face. But her fingers, small and thin, gripped the floor tighter. It was the smallest reaction, but James noticed it. That tiny movement told him she was still alive inside, still feeling, still listening. The worker sighed behind him. "Sir, I told you, she's hopeless. The others are better choices. Do you want me to show you?" "No," James interrupted. His voice was quiet, but it carried weight. He stood up, facing the worker directly. "I'll take her." The worker blinked in surprise, thinking he misheard. "What? You mean her? Subject 19? James nodded firmly. "Yes, that one." The worker frowned, shaking his head like it was a foolish mistake. "Sir, listen to me. She isn't like the others. She won't talk, she won't laugh, she barely eats. People have tried before and brought her back. Do you understand? She is the saddest child we have, and she cannot be fixed." James's jaw tightened. His eyes softened as he looked back at the girl in the cage. Maybe she doesn't need to be fixed. Maybe she just needs someone who won't give up on her. Silence stretched between them. The worker muttered something under his breath, but finally unlocked the cage. The door creaked as it opened, and for the first time, the girl moved. Slowly, Cautiously, she lifted her head and looked at James with both eyes. They glowed softly in the dim light, full of pain and confusion. James reached out his hand. His palm was open, steady, waiting. The girl stared at it for what felt like forever. Then, with trembling fingers, she placed her hand in his. It was cold and fragile, but it was real. James smiled faintly. "You're coming home with me now." The worker muttered, "You'll regret it." But James didn't hear him anymore. He was too busy watching the little alien girl take her first step out of the cage. She stumbled, weak and unsure, but she held onto his hand tightly, as if it was the only thing keeping her standing. The shelter seemed darker than ever around them, but as James led her out, a small spark lit up in his chest. He had no idea what waited ahead. He didn't know her secrets, her past, or the dangers that might come with her. But at that moment, he knew one thing with certainty. He had just adopted the saddest alien girl in the shelter, and nothing would ever be the same again. The ride home was quiet. James kept looking at the little alien girl sitting in the passenger seat. She held her small hands together tightly, her glowing veins faint under her pale skin. She did not speak, did not even look out of the window. Her eyes stayed low, fixed on her knees as if the world outside didn't matter anymore. James wanted to say something, to make her feel safe, but every word he thought of felt too heavy. So he just drove, glancing at her sometimes, trying to let his calm presence speak louder than words. When they reached his small house at the edge of the city, James parked the car and stepped out. The girl stayed in her seat, frozen, unsure if she was allowed to move. James opened her door slowly and held out his hand. She stared at it for a moment, the same way she had at the shelter, and then placed her hand in his again. Her grip was weak but desperate, as if she feared he might let go at any second. Inside the house, the air was warm and smelled faintly of bread and old books. It was nothing special, just a simple human home. But to the girl, it must have been strange. She walked carefully, her steps light, almost silent, as if she didn't want to disturb anything. Her wide eyes scanned the room, but instead of curiosity, they carried fear. James noticed how she flinched when the fridge clicked on, how her shoulders tightened when the floor creaked. James crouched down to her level. "This is your home now," he said gently. "You don't have to be afraid here." The girl didn't reply. She hugged herself and kept looking at the floor. James sighed softly, stood up and walked to the kitchen. He opened a cupboard, pulled out a plate and placed some food on it. Simple bread, a little fruit, and a glass of water. He set it on the table and then stepped back, giving her space. The girl walked forward slowly, her eyes fixed on the food. She climbed onto the chair, but didn't eat right away. Instead, she pulled the plate close and wrapped her arms around it, shielding it like someone might try to steal it from her. James's heart ached at the sight. He realized this was not the first time she had eaten like this. Somewhere in her past, food must have been something she had to fight for, something that could be taken away at any moment. "You don't have to hide it," James said softly. "No one will take it from you. It's all yours." Still, she ate quickly, stuffing small bites into her mouth, eyes flicking around the room as if checking for danger. James sat across from her, not touching his own food, just watching her silently. It hurt him to see her like this, so fragile and so full of fear. But he also knew he couldn't rush her. Trust would take time. After dinner, James showed her the small room he had prepared. It wasn't much, just a bed, a blanket, and a little lamp. She stepped inside carefully, touching nothing, only standing near the door. "This is your room," James told her. "You can rest here whenever you want. No one will bother you." She didn't answer, but her eyes lingered on the bed for a moment. James left her there, giving her space, and went to his own room. He tried to read a book, but his mind kept going back to the girl. Was she scared? Was she crying? Was she even able to sleep? He didn't know. He lay down, but sleep did not come easily. It was deep into the night when James suddenly woke up. At first, he didn't know why. Then he heard it, a soft sound, barely there. A muffled sob, almost like a whisper. He got up quietly and followed the sound down the hallway. It came from the girl's room. He opened the door just enough to peek inside. The lamp was off, but the faint glow of her veins lit up the dark. She was sitting on the bed, knees pulled to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her face was buried, but the trembling of her shoulders and the sound of her quiet sobs filled the room. And then James saw it. Her tears were not like human tears. They glowed faintly, like tiny drops of light sliding down her cheeks, shimmering in the dark. James felt his chest tighten painfully. He stepped inside slowly, careful not to scare her. "Hey," he whispered, "you don't have to cry alone." The girl flinched and quickly wiped her glowing tears, as if ashamed. She turned away, refusing to meet his eyes. James sat on the edge of the bed, keeping some distance. "I know it's hard," he said softly. "I don't know what you've been through, but you're safe now. No one will hurt you here." For a long moment, she stayed silent. Then, in the faintest voice, broken and shaky, she whispered, They always take everything away." It was the first time James had heard her speak. His breath caught in his throat. Her voice was small, like it belonged to someone who had been silenced too many times. James wanted to ask who they were, but he stopped himself. He didn't want to push her too fast. Instead, he nodded gently. "Not here," he said. "Not with me. You'll keep what's yours. You'll keep your place, and no one will take you away again." The girl slowly lifted her head. Her glowing eyes were wet with tears, full of pain, but also a faint spark of something else, maybe hope. She looked at him for a long moment, then leaned slightly toward him, as if testing if he would push her away. James opened his arm carefully, giving her the choice. She hesitated, then leaned against him, resting her head on his side. James wrapped his arm gently around her small shoulders. She was trembling, but little by little her body relaxed. Her sobs grew quieter until they faded into soft breaths. James sat there in the dark, holding her, not saying another word. He didn't need to. She had spoken once, and that was enough. As she finally drifted into sleep against him, James knew this was only the beginning. The girl carried scars far deeper than he could see. But tonight, she was no longer alone. And maybe, just maybe, this was the first step toward healing the saddest alien girl he had ever met. The morning sun slipped through the curtains, filling the small house with a warm light. James walked into the kitchen, yawning softly, and found the little alien girl already sitting at the table. She wasn't eating or moving much. She just sat quietly with her small hands folded, her glowing veins faintly visible under her skin. James gave her a smile and placed a bowl of food in front of her. "Good morning," he said gently. She looked at the food, then at him, but said nothing. James went about his morning routine, cleaning dishes, checking the small garden outside, trying to keep the atmosphere normal. He didn't want her to feel like she was in a shelter again, where people watched her every move. He wanted her to feel free. But as he walked back inside, something caught his eye. The girl was holding her small hand out in front of her. Between her fingers, a faint ball of light was forming, no bigger than a firefly. It glowed softly, pulsing with energy, shifting between blue and white. James froze in the doorway, watching. The girl's face was calm, her lips pressed tightly, her focus strong. She wasn't playing. She was controlling something powerful. But then she noticed him. The light vanished instantly, like it had never been there. She pulled her hand to her chest, her eyes wide with fear. Her shoulders shook slightly, and she whispered, "Don't tell." James blinked, still surprised. What was that?" he asked softly, walking closer. "Was that you?" She shook her head quickly, tears forming in her glowing eyes. "I didn't do anything. Please, don't tell them." James knelt beside her, lowering his voice, trying not to scare her. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to tell anyone, but you don't have to be afraid of me." She shook her head again, her voice breaking. "If they know, they will take me away. They always do." James felt a sharp pain in his chest. Whoever they were, they had left deep fear inside her. He remembered how she had clutched her food like someone would steal it. Now he understood. Everything in her life had been about surviving, about hiding. He didn't want her to live in fear anymore. "You don't have to hide from me," James said gently. "Not here. Not in this house. You're safe with me." For a moment, she just stared at him. Then, slowly, she lifted her hand again. A faint spark appeared, glowing like a star. She let it flicker between her fingers, trembling as if she was expecting him to shout or get angry. But James only watched, his eyes wide with wonder. "It's beautiful," he whispered. The girl gasped, almost dropping the light. You don't think it's bad?" James shook his head. "No. Why would I think that? It's a gift." Her lips trembled as she whispered, "They said it's dangerous. They said I'm dangerous." James reached out slowly and held her small hand in his. The glowing ball faded, but her fingers were still warm from the energy. "You're not dangerous," he said firmly. "You're just a child. What you can do, it doesn't make you bad. It just makes you special." The girl's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were different. They weren't only sad. There was confusion, maybe even a spark of hope. No one had ever told her that before. She looked down at their joined hands, trembling as if the weight of his words was too much to believe. James smiled gently. "Do you want to show me again?" She hesitated, biting her lip, then nodded. She closed her eyes and lifted her hand. Slowly, carefully, a small orb of light appeared, glowing brighter this time. It hovered above her palm, shimmering softly. James leaned closer, amazed at the way it lit her face, highlighting her delicate features. She looked fragile, but in that moment, she also looked powerful, like someone who carried a piece of the stars inside her. "See?" James said softly. "That's not something to hide. That's something to be proud of." The girl's breathing was uneven, but she didn't stop. The ball of light floated higher, then split into tiny sparks, like fireflies scattering in the air. They danced around the room for a few seconds before fading away. James clapped his hands once, gently but with honest joy. That was incredible. Her eyes widened. She had expected fear, anger, or rejection. Instead, she got applause. For the first time since he had met her, she gave him the smallest smile. It was quick and uncertain, but it was real. James's heart lifted. He wanted to protect that smile, to make sure it didn't disappear again. But even as he felt joy, he also felt worry. If she was hiding this, it meant others really would try to take her away if they found out. Her fear wasn't just from nowhere. Someone had taught her to hide. Someone had convinced her she was dangerous. The girl looked at him again, serious now. "You can't tell anyone. Promise." James nodded without hesitation. "I promise." She studied his face, trying to see if he was lying. Then, slowly, she relaxed, as if for the first time she believed someone might keep a promise. She whispered, "Thank you." James patted her head gently, careful not to scare her. "You don't have to thank me. I told you, you're safe here. Whatever your gift is, whatever you can do, it doesn't change who you are. You're still the little girl I brought home." She leaned forward suddenly, wrapping her thin arms around his waist. It was a clumsy hug, shaky and unsure, but James held her back, closing his eyes. He felt her trembling against him, but also the warmth of trust beginning to grow. That day, everything changed. James had seen her secret, the truth she had tried so hard to bury. She was no ordinary child. Her powers were beyond anything he had known. But more important than her gift was her pain, and now her fragile trust in him. James didn't know what dangers might come. He didn't know who they were or how far they would go to find her. But as he held her close, he made a silent vow. No matter what happened, he would not let anyone take her away. She was his daughter now, and nothing in the galaxy would change that. The night was quiet, but James could not sleep. He sat on the old chair near the window, staring at the stars above the city. His thoughts kept going back to the little alien girl sleeping in the next room. The image of her small hand glowing with light was burned into his mind. She was not just a sad, broken child from the shelter. She carried something powerful, something others would call dangerous. He knew there had to be a story behind it, something she had never told anyone. When morning came, James made breakfast again. He set the food on the table and watched her carefully. She was calmer now, not clutching the plate so tightly. Her glowing eyes lifted toward him once or twice, as if she wanted to say something but didn't know how. James gave her a gentle smile. "You don't have to hide here," he said softly. "Not your tears, not your smile, not even your light. Do you want to tell me where it comes from?" The girl froze. Her spoon hovered in the air for a long moment before she set it down. Her small hands tightened into fists. For a while, James thought she wouldn't answer. But then, in a shaky voice, she whispered, You won't send me back if I tell you?" James leaned forward, his voice steady. "Never. I told you, you're safe with me. Nothing you say will change that." She stared at him, searching his face for any sign of a lie. Then she lowered her gaze and began to speak. Her voice was so soft that James had to lean closer to catch every word. "My home was far away," she said slowly. a planet of light. We lived under skies that never turned dark. Everyone had a glow inside them, like me. Some could make fire, some could make water, some could heal. My family, they said I was special, too special. Her breath caught, and James noticed her shoulders trembling. He reached across the table and placed his hand gently over hers. She squeezed her eyes shut and continued. Then the war came, the sky filled with fire and ships. Strangers invaded. They wanted our power. They said it was a weapon. My people fought, but we lost. I saw my home burn. I saw them take my mother away. I ran. I hid, but they found me. Her voice cracked, and glowing tears slid down her cheeks. James's chest tightened painfully, but he stayed quiet, letting her speak. They put me in a cage, she whispered. Not just me, many children. They said we were dangerous, but really they wanted to use us. Some kids were taken away and never came back. Others cried until they stopped crying forever. I stayed quiet. I thought if I stayed quiet, they would forget me. But they didn't. They called me broken. They called me useless. Then the shelter bought me, but it was the same thing. Another cage, another place waiting for someone to take me away. James felt anger burning in his chest. He wanted to shout, to break something, to make the people who had hurt her pay, but he forced himself to stay calm for her sake. He squeezed her hand gently. And then I came, he said softly. The girl nodded slowly, her eyes lowering again. Yes, but I thought you would take me back too. Everyone does. James leaned closer, his voice firm but warm. I am not everyone. I will not take you back. I will not let them hurt you. You are not broken, and you are not useless. You survived things no child should survive. That makes you strong, stronger than anyone who ever called you weak. Her lips trembled, and for the first time she let out a small sound that almost sounded like a laugh, though it was mixed with tears. She looked up at him, her glowing eyes filled with disbelief. Strong? She repeated softly. Me? Yes, James said. You, the saddest girl I ever saw, and also the bravest. You kept your light even in the darkest place. That is strength. The girl covered her face with her small hands and began to cry again. But it was different this time. The sound was raw, full of pain, but also full of release. She was not crying because she was afraid. She was crying because for the first time, someone believed in her. James moved to her side and wrapped his arms gently around her. She clung to him tightly, sobbing against his chest. He stroked her messy hair and whispered, It's over now. You're not in a cage anymore. You're free, and you'll never be alone again. They stayed like that for a long time, until her sobs grew quiet. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were still wet, but there was a faint light in them that had not been there before. She whispered, Thank you, Papa. The word hit James like a heavy blow and a warm gift at the same time. She had never called him that before. For a moment, he couldn't even speak. His throat tightened and his eyes burned. He pulled her close again and whispered, You don't have to thank me. I'll always be your papa now. From that day, things between them changed. The girl still carried fear, still woke up from nightmares, still struggled to eat without guarding her plate. But she also began to trust him. She began to sit closer at the table, to watch him when he worked in the garden, to let herself rest without keeping one eye open. The heavy silence around her slowly softened. But James also knew the truth now. She wasn't just a sad child from the shelter. She was a survivor of a war, a child with powers that others wanted to control. He knew that if word spread, if the wrong people discovered she was with him, they would come. They would try to take her away again. That night, as he tucked her into bed and watched her glowing eyes close in fragile sleep, James made himself a promise. He would protect her no matter the cost. He would stand against anyone who came for her. She was not just an orphan, not just an alien child with powers. She was his daughter now, and he would fight the whole galaxy if he had to, just to keep her safe. The evening was calm. James had just finished fixing the old fence outside when he heard footsteps behind him. The little alien girl was standing there, holding a small flower she had picked from the garden. Her glowing eyes looked softer now, less empty than when he first met her. She gave the flower to him without a word, and he smiled, tucking it gently into his shirt pocket. It was a small gesture, but to James it meant more than gold. She was beginning to trust him, beginning to see him as family. But peace never lasted long. As the sun began to set, James noticed a black vehicle stop at the edge of the road near his house. His heart tightened. Strangers stepped out, 2 men and 1 woman, all wearing the same dark uniform with silver badges on their shoulders. Their faces were sharp, their eyes cold, the kind of people who saw rules, not lives. James instantly knew they were not here by accident. One of them called out, "Mr. James Carter?" James stood tall, hiding the girl behind him. "Who's asking?" The woman showed a tablet with official markings. "We represent the Interplanetary Child Services Division. It has come to our attention that you adopted Subject 19 from the shelter." The girl trembled behind him at the word subject. Her tiny fingers gripped the back of his shirt tightly. James felt her shaking and gently touched her hand, giving her silent reassurance. "She's not a subject," James said firmly. "She's a child, and yes, she's with me now." The man in the group stepped forward. "Then you know she's not safe to be raised in a private home. She has abilities, powers that need control. We've come to take her back for her own good." The girl pressed her face into James's back, whispering with a voice full of fear, "Papa, don't let them take me." Those words broke James's heart and fueled his anger at the same time. He turned back to the officials, his voice hard. "She's not going anywhere. She belongs here." The officials exchanged glances. The woman's tone sharpened. "You don't understand the danger. If she loses control, she could harm you. She could harm herself. Regulations are clear. Children like her must remain under government supervision." James clenched his fists. "Government supervision? You mean cages. You mean the same treatment that nearly destroyed her. I've seen what your shelters do. She's not safe with you. She's safe with me." The officials moved closer, and the girl panicked. A small spark of light flickered from her hands, uncontrolled. The officials stepped back, alarm flashing in their eyes. "You see?" the man shouted. "She's unstable. We need to contain her before it's too late." James immediately knelt down and turned to face her. He cupped her glowing hands gently, ignoring the sparks that burned faintly against his skin. "It's okay. Look at me," he whispered. "You're not hurting me. You're safe. Don't be afraid." Her glowing eyes filled with tears. "They'll take me? I'll never come back." James shook his head. "No, I won't let them." Behind him, the officials grew impatient. "Step aside, Carter. This is beyond your control." James stood up, placing himself like a wall between the girl and the officers. His voice was calm but iron hard. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The man sneered. "Do you really think you can stop us?" James didn't answer. His silence was heavier than words. He felt the girl's small hand gripping his own, trembling but refusing to let go. That simple touch gave him all the strength he needed. The woman sighed, clearly frustrated. "You're making a mistake. She's dangerous, and you'll regret this." James's jaw tightened. "The only mistake was believing you could scare me into handing her over. She's not dangerous. She's just a child who's been treated like a monster for too long, and I won't let you do it again." For a tense moment, no one moved. The air between them was heavy, charged with fear and determination. Then, the officials exchanged glances and finally stepped back. "We'll be back," the woman warned coldly. "You can't hide her forever." James didn't flinch. He only tightened his hold on the girl's hand and led her back inside. The vehicle drove away into the night, leaving behind only dust and the weight of their promise. Inside the house, the girl collapsed into his arms, crying hard. Her glowing tears soaked his shirt as she sobbed. "I thought they would take me. I thought you would let them." James held her close, rocking her gently. "Never," he whispered. "You're my daughter now. I don't care who they are or what they say. No one is taking you away from me." She clung to him with all her strength, burying her face against his chest. For the first time, she believed those words. For the first time, she knew she was not alone in the fight. That night, James didn't sleep. He sat awake with her curled up beside him, her small hand still gripping his shirt even in her dreams. He watched the door, knowing the officials would return. They would not stop easily. They wanted her power. They wanted to control her. But James also knew something else now. The girl wasn't weak. She wasn't useless. She was stronger than anyone realized. He had seen the sparks of her power, and he had seen her courage when she begged him not to let go. Together, they were not helpless. As the stars moved slowly across the sky, James made another silent vow. If the world tried to take her again, if the galaxy tried to tear her away, he would fight. With his hands, with his will, with everything he had. Because she had called him Papa. Because she had finally found someone who believed in her. And because he loved her like his own blood. The saddest alien girl in the shelter was no longer just a broken child. She was his daughter, his family, and James was ready to protect her, no matter what it cost him. The night after the officials came, the house was heavy with silence. James stayed awake, moving from window to window, watching the road outside. He knew they would return. He knew people like them never gave up easily. The little alien girl slept restlessly on the couch beside him, her small body curled up under a blanket. Even in sleep, she clutched his sleeve tightly, as if afraid he might vanish if she let go. Near midnight, James heard the faint hum of engines. He froze, every muscle in his body tense. Through the window, he saw dark shapes moving across the field, figures dressed in the same uniforms as before. But this time, there were more of them. At least 6, maybe more, carrying weapons that glowed faintly blue in the dark. They weren't here to talk anymore. They were here to take her by force. James knelt by the couch and shook the girl gently. "Wake up," he whispered. Her glowing eyes opened instantly, wide with fear. "They're here," James said softly. "But I won't let them take you. Do you trust me?" She trembled, then nodded, whispering, "I trust you, Papa." The sound of her voice calling him Papa filled him with fire. He stood up and grabbed the old hunting rifle he kept by the door. It wasn't much compared to the weapons outside, but it was better than nothing. He turned to her. "Stay behind me. No matter what happens, don't let go of my hand." The front door shook violently as someone tried to force it open. James stood firm, his rifle ready, his jaw clenched. With a loud crash, the door burst open and the officers stormed in. The woman from before stepped inside first, her voice sharp. "Stand down, Carter. This is your last chance. Hand over Subject 19. "She's not a subject," James shouted, his voice echoing through the house. "She's my daughter." The girl gripped his hand tighter, sparks of light flickering between her trembling fingers. The officers raised their weapons, aiming at both of them. "She's unstable," one of them barked. "If she loses control, she could kill you all." James's heart pounded, but he didn't move aside. "She's not unstable," he growled. "She's scared, and you're the ones who made her that way." The officers stepped forward, and everything seemed to happen at once. The girl screamed, a raw sound of fear, and the air around her exploded with light. A shield of energy burst outward, knocking the first 2 officers to the ground. Their weapons skidded across the floor, useless against the glowing barrier that now surrounded James and the girl. James turned, shocked but amazed. She was standing in front of him now, her small body trembling, her glowing eyes blazing with light. Her tears streamed down her cheeks, glowing brighter than ever, but her voice was steady as she cried, "Stay away from my Papa." The officers froze, their faces filled with shock and fear. None of them had expected a child to wield such power. The woman snarled, "See? She's dangerous." But James stepped forward, placing his hands gently on the girl's shoulders. "Listen to me," he whispered. "You're not dangerous. You're protecting me. You're strong. And I'm proud of you." Her glowing energy flickered uncertainly, like it was tied to her emotions. James knew if she lost control, she could hurt herself. So he pulled her close and held her tightly, whispering into her hair. "You're not alone anymore. You don't have to fight by yourself. We'll face them together." The shield grew steadier, brighter, wrapping around them like a living wall of light. The officers tried to push through, but their weapons sizzled uselessly against it. One by one, they stumbled back, shielding their eyes from the brilliance. The girl's voice shook as she cried, "They'll never take me again." James lifted his rifle and aimed at the floor near the leader's feet. He fired a single shot, the sound cracking like thunder through the house. The officers froze. James's voice boomed. "Get out! She's not yours to take. You try again, and I'll show you just how dangerous a father can be." For a tense moment, no one moved. Then the woman signaled her team to retreat. "This isn't over," she hissed. "We'll be back. And when we come, not even you will be able to stop us." They slipped into the night, their engines fading into silence. Slowly, the girl's shield of light dimmed until it disappeared completely. She collapsed against James, her body shaking from exhaustion. James dropped his rifle and caught her in his arms, holding her close. You did it, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. You saved us. Her eyes fluttered open, her tears glowing faintly. I was scared, she whispered weakly. I thought I would hurt you. James kissed the top of her head gently. You didn't hurt me. You saved me. You saved both of us. You're not a monster, sweetheart. You're my daughter, and nothing will ever change that. She clung to him, sobbing into his chest, her small body trembling. James rocked her gently, whispering over and over, It's okay. I'm here. I'm not letting go. Later, as she finally drifted into sleep in his arms, James sat on the couch staring at the broken door. He knew the officials would not give up. They would return, stronger, with more men, with more weapons. They wanted her power too much. But he also knew something else. The girl was stronger than even she realized. Tonight she had shown courage beyond her years, and with him by her side, she was unstoppable. James tightened his hold on her, his eyes burning with determination. He didn't care if he had to fight the entire system, the entire galaxy. He didn't care if he had to sacrifice everything. They would not take her. She was his child now, and he would fight until his last breath to keep her safe. The saddest alien girl was no longer just a victim of cages and cruelty. She was a fighter, a child with the heart of a warrior. And James knew that as long as they stood together, no one, not governments, not soldiers, not even fate itself, could tear them apart. The days after the attack passed slowly, but nothing felt normal anymore. James fixed the broken door with strong wood and metal, making sure no one could enter so easily again. The little alien girl stayed close to him everywhere he went. If he went to the garden, she followed. If he sat at the table, she sat beside him. Even at night, she refused to sleep in her own room, instead curling up on the couch near him. She was afraid that if she closed her eyes alone, she would wake up back in a cage. James never forced her. He let her stay where she felt safe, even if it meant he slept in the chair beside her. Slowly, she began to smile more. Not often, but enough for James to notice. When he cooked, she watched with curious eyes, sometimes reaching to help. When he read, she leaned against his arm quietly, her glowing eyes following the pages. One evening, she even laughed, a soft, fragile sound, when his old dog barked at its own reflection in the window. The laugh lasted only a moment, but James held onto it like a treasure. But deep inside, James knew peace could not last. The officials had promised they would return. And worse, if what the girl had said was true, then maybe others, people who had destroyed her home, who had stolen children like her, might also be searching. Every time James looked at the night sky, he wondered if ships were already out there, watching, waiting. One evening, James and the girl sat outside under the stars. She leaned against his side, her small hand wrapped around his. After a long silence, she whispered, "Do you think they'll come again?" James sighed, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "Yes," he admitted, "but this time, we'll be ready." Her glowing eyes lifted to him. "We?" He smiled and brushed her messy hair back gently. "Yes, we, because you're not alone anymore. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." Her lips trembled, and then she rested her head on his chest. For the first time, she believed his words fully. The next morning, a strange shadow moved across the sky. James stepped outside and saw a large ship high above, blocking part of the sunlight. His chest tightened. It wasn't the official's vehicle. This was bigger, sleek, military. It hovered for a while before vanishing into the clouds. James knew what it meant. They weren't safe. Not here. Not anywhere if they stayed still. That night, when the girl had fallen asleep, James packed a small bag with food, water, and a few tools. He looked at her fragile face as she slept peacefully, and he made his decision. They couldn't just wait for danger to come. They had to move, to find somewhere safe, maybe somewhere beyond the reach of those who wanted her power. But before he could act, the danger came faster than he expected. The ground shook in the early morning. Bright lights cut through the windows, and a voice thundered through loudspeakers. "James Carter, surrender the child immediately. This is your final warning." The girl woke with a scream, clutching his arm. Outside, dozens of armed figures surrounded the house. The ship hovered above, its engines roaring like a storm. James's heart raced, but his fear turned quickly to fire. He grabbed the rifle, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. He turned to the girl, kneeling so their eyes were level. "Listen to me," he said, his voice calm even as the walls shook. "You are stronger than they think. You can protect yourself. You can protect us, but you don't have to do it alone. I'll fight with you. Do you believe me?" Her glowing tears fell fast. "I'm scared, Papa." James pulled her into a tight hug. "So am I, but courage is being scared and still standing. And I know you can do it." The door burst open, soldiers flooding inside. James stood in front, rifle raised, his body a shield. But before he could fire, the girl stepped forward. Her small frame trembled, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. "Leave us alone," she screamed. The entire house exploded with light. A wave of energy blasted outward, knocking the soldiers off their feet, sending weapons flying. The ship above flickered as its systems overloaded from the energy pulse. The night sky lit up like a second sun had been born inside the little house. When the light faded, the soldiers lay unconscious on the ground. Sparks rained from the ship as it pulled back into the clouds, retreating in defeat. James blinked, his vision blurred, and then turned to the girl. She stood in the center of the room, her body glowing with raw power, but her face showed only fear of herself. She looked at her hands, shaking. I hurt them." James dropped his rifle and knelt, pulling her into his arms. "No," he whispered firmly. "You protected us. You didn't destroy. You defended. That's the difference." She clung to him, sobbing into his chest, terrified of her own strength. James stroked her hair gently. "Listen to me. You're not a weapon. You're not what they say. You're my daughter, and you're the bravest child I've ever known." As dawn broke, the soldiers lay scattered, the field burned with traces of her light, and the house stood scarred but unbroken. James sat on the porch with her in his lap, watching the sunrise. She was exhausted, asleep against his chest, her small hands still clutching his shirt. James looked at the horizon, his eyes hard but hopeful. The battle wasn't over. More would come. More would try. But he also knew something had changed forever. She was no longer the saddest alien girl in the shelter. She was no longer a child who had given up. She was a survivor, a protector, and now part of a family. James whispered softly, more to himself than anyone else. "They'll never take you from me. Not while I breathe." And as the sun rose higher, casting golden light over the broken field, James knew one truth with absolute certainty. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As father and daughter, unbreakable, unstoppable, and forever bound by the love that had saved them both.